So I was standing in line for coffee this morning, and I caught myself doing this thing. I think we all do it, right? Probably hundreds of times a day, and we don't even notice.
Oh, was it?
Just mentally cataloging all my stuff, thinking about my schedule for the day, my car parked outside, my stress about a deadline, even my aching lower back.
Right. Staking claims.
Yeah. We draw these tight little circles around parts of the universe and we slap a label on them that says property of me.
It's the default setting.
Yeah.
It's the human operating system. It's how we navigate the world.
And it feels completely natural. It feels like the truth. But today's going to be a little different. We're looking at a text that suggests this entire instinct, this whole concept of mindness, is basically a hallucination.
It calls it a narrative layer applied to influence.
A narrative layer.
Yeah. The argument is that ownership isn't a property of physics or anything. It's a story we tell ourselves to make sense of our influence over things.
Which is a very polite way of saying we're delusional. The thesis here is pretty radical. Nothing actually belongs to us. We think we're owners, but we're just participants.
And that confusion has surprisingly high stakes. The text argues that shifting from owning to participating, it completely rewires your life. How you feel pride, how you process guilt.
I have to admit, when I first started reading this stuff, I felt a mix of intrigue and genuine existential panic. It's unmooring. If I don't own my thoughts, who does?
But the text frames this not as a loss, but as a liberation.
Right.
It calls it the move from a fortress mentality, where you're always defending your territory, to an interface mentality. That's the key concept we're driving toward today. The self as an interface.
I love that image, but before we get there, we have to look at the inventory. All the things we're so sure are ours, the source material just systematically dismantles them, starting with the biggest one, the body.
Yeah, that's usually the hardest hurdle for people.
Of course. You live in it. If I stub my toe, I feel the pain. If I go to the gym, I do the work. Surely this biology is mine. I possess it.
You have exclusive access. But the source argues the body isn't owned. It's maintained. We are, and I love this phrase, temporarily organized by our biology.
Temporarily organized? That sounds like a corporate restructuring, not a human life.
But think about it biologically. Your cells are constantly dying and being replaced. The actual matter that makes up you right now is totally different from the matter that was you 10 years ago. You're a pattern that matter flows through. You don't own the water in the river. You're just the shape of the wave for a moment.
So I'm basically the property manager of a biological building I don't hold the deed to.
That is a great way to put it. You have stewardship, not ownership. And eventually the lease is up.
Okay, I can sort of squint and see that with biology. But let's go deeper. The mind, my thoughts. This feels undeniable. If I have a brilliant idea for a startup, that came from me.
But did it? The text challenges this, and aggressively. It says the mind is not owned, it is conditioned.
Conditioned by what?
By everything that isn't you. The language you think in... Did you invent English?
No.
No. You're using a tool developed over thousands of years. Every concept you have is shaped by a culture you were born into which you didn't choose. Your biological predispositions. All of it.
So if I have a brilliant idea, it's not really my idea. It's just history and language and biology all colliding in my brain.
The text would ask, are they your thoughts? Or are you just the location where those conditions converged to create a thought?
That's terrifying. It's like saying my brain is just a radio receiver picking up signals.
But it's also accurate, isn't it? I mean, have you ever tried to stop thinking?
I try to meditate sometimes. It does not go well. The thoughts, they just keep coming.
Exactly. Thoughts arise. They happen to you. You don't manufacture them. You host them.
We host our thoughts. Let's put a pin in that, because that's huge for creativity later. But okay, next on the list. Time. My time. I am incredibly protective of my time.
The source is pretty blunt here. Time is not owned. It is occupied.
Occupied.
You can't save it. You can't bank it. You can only be in it. Calling it yours is like standing in a breeze and calling it my wind.
And then finally, objects. The physical stuff. My laptop, my house. We have legal documents that say these are mine.
And this description is, it's a bit technical, but fascinating. It describes objects, not as possessions, but as things temporarily stabilized in one pattern of access inside a larger field of circulation.
Whoa, okay, let's break that down. Temporarily stabilized pattern of access.
Okay, take your ar. 100 years ago, the atoms in that car were iron ore in the ground, rubber in a tree.
Right.
Then a massive industrial process brings them together, stabilizes them into the shape of a car. And for a brief window, you have the keys, you have access.
But the process hasn't stuck.
Never. Eventually it'll be scrap metal, then rust, then dust. You just have a temporary access key to a part of the material flow.
So it's all just process. And we take a snapshot and say, this is mine, but the process just keeps moving.
Which leads to the big question. If reality is all just flow, why are we so obsessed with claiming it? Why do we instinctively scream, mine?
It feels like a survival thing, right?
Well, the text says intelligence invents ownership when it confuses participation with possession.
Participation versus possession, that's a key distinction.
Think about raising a child. That's a deep form of participation. You influence them so heavily, but because we interact so closely, we slip into thinking we possess them, my child.
And then we feel betrayed when they make their own choices, because we confuse participation with ownership.
Exactly. Or we influence an outcome, like a promotion, and we call it an achievement that belongs to us. But the text says ownership requires something reality just can't give us.
What's that?
A boundary. A clear, impermeable inside that is you, and a controllable outside that is the world.
And reality is just messy. It bleeds across the lines.
Precisely. Where does your influence end and your team's begin? There are no clean lines. So intelligence just invents the boundary.
We draw a line in the sand to feel safe.
Yeah. It stabilizes our experience, but just because it feels better doesn't mean it's how the world actually works.
Okay, so we've dismantled the owner. We've stripped away the body, the mind, the time, the stuff. If we're not the source of these things, what are we? You used a word earlier.
The interface.
The self as interface. That is a huge shift. I usually see myself as the generator. I generated this idea, but the text is saying no.
No. The self isn't a source. It's an interface where different forces intersect. The text says everything that appears personal is actually distributed across conditions.
And it lists them. Biology, environment, history, language, culture, chance, timing.
So let's make that real. Imagine you crack a really funny joke at a dinner party. Everyone laughs. You think, I am funny.
Yeah.
That was me.
Oh, I'm definitely taking credit in that moment.
No. But look at the distribution. The language you used, not yours. The cultural reference that made the joke land. You didn't invent it. The timing that let the joke fit. Pure chance. Your brain chemistry. Biology.
So I didn't make the joke. I was just the place where the language, culture, and timing collided.
You were the point where those things intersected.
Yeah.
The interface that allowed the joke to manifest. The interface is necessary, but you weren't the sole author.
Wow. It redefines the owner as just the location where the forces met.
And this applies to everything. Your successes, your failures, your personality, they're all intersections.
I can follow the logic, but emotionally, it feels a little like theft. If I'm not the owner of my success, doesn't that take away my pride?
That's the natural reaction. But the text argues that pride based on ownership is actually toxic. It's fragile.
Fragile how?
Because deep down, you know you got lucky with timing. You know you had help. So if you claim 100% authorship, your pride is always waiting to be exposed as a fraud. That's where imposter syndrome comes from.
That makes a lot of sense. Imposter syndrome is the fear that someone will find out you aren't the sole source.
Right. But if you see yourself as an interface, it just vanishes. You can say, yes, I was lucky, and I was the one who showed up to execute.
And on the flip side, there's guilt.
This is where the text is most compassionate. It says guilt feels misplaced because we claim responsibility for outcomes we can't fully influence. If a project fails and you see yourself as the sole owner of that failure, it crushes you.
But if you see yourself as just one participant in a complex situation...
Exactly. You could look at the failure and say the timing was off or the market changed. You can learn from your part in it without being destroyed by the weight of it all.
And then there's control.
Control feels exhausting because the self is trying to possess what it only participates in.
I felt that one in my soul. Trying to possess what you only participate in. It's like trying to hold water in your fist.
That's a perfect analogy. We're exhausted because we're trying to be dams when we're actually just channels.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate. I can hear a listener saying, if I walk into a store and take a TV and say, hey, nobody owns this, it's just temporarily stabilized matter, I'm going to get arrested.
And you should be. The source material isn't suggesting anarchy.
So ownership has to mean something, right?
It does. The source makes this crucial distinction. It says ownership is functionally useful, but not ontologically true.
Okay, ontologically true. Translate for us.
Ontology is about what's actually real. So think of the game Monopoly. In the game, you own Park Place. that is functionally useful for playing, but ontologically, it's just a piece of cardboard.
So ownership is the rules of the game we play as a society.
Exactly. It allows for coordination, for accountability. The story of ownership keeps the traffic lights working.
But we get into trouble when we forget it's just a game.
Yes, we mistake the monopoly money for real wealth. We can play the game of ownership while realizing deep down at the level of the universe, it's just a story.
We don't have to reject society, just change our internal relationship to it.
The text uses the word entrained. Nothing is owned. Everything is entrained. We flow with things.
We do not own our thoughts. We host them. That phrase keeps coming back to me. It makes me think about creativity, because this is where the interface idea really clicked for me.
The experience of creating something larger than yourself.
Yes. The source describes creating something clearer than your sense of identity. It's that moment where you look at what you just did and think, where on earth did that come from?
Right. You feel like a bystander to your own work.
And we usually try to force that into the ownership box. We say, I am a genius, but then we can't repeat it and we get blocked.
Because you're trying to claim ownership of the flow. The source suggests we replace pride with a different feeling. Accuracy.
Accuracy. That is such a weird word to use there. What does it mean?
It means you don't feel like a god. You feel like a well-calibrated instrument. You don't feel special. You feel positioned. You feel like a crossing point that was open enough to let the signal through.
So instead of look what I made, it's look what came through.
Exactly. It's the humility of recognition. You recognize the intelligence was already there, the conditions aligned, and this is the key. The interface opened. You got out of your own way.
The pattern passed through. That removes the ego, but not the joy.
It purifies the joy. You aren't worried about if it proves you're good enough. You're just satisfied the signal was clear.
It says here, authorship feels artificial. That's the shift. Creation isn't something the self does, it's something that happens.
At the right place, at the right time.
So if we accept all this, if we're interfaces, not sources, does that make us passive? Just sitting on the couch waiting for the universe to flow through us?
That's a common fear, but the source says no. We still act. We still choose. But the nature of that power changes.
How so?
Power becomes relational. It's not about imposing your will in the world. It's about aligning yourself with the forces of the world, like a surfer.
A surfer doesn't create the wave.
But a surfer is definitely not passive. They are highly active, constantly adjusting, positioning themselves to catch that energy.
The surfer is the ultimate interface. If they fight the ocean, they drown. If they just sit there, they sink. They have to participate.
Exactly. The text says, we are not empty, but nothing was ever contained. It calls this the quiet end of ownership.
The quiet end of ownership. That sounds peaceful.
It is.
Yeah.
Think about how much energy we spend defending our territory. My ideas, my reputation, my stuff. If you realize you're just a temporary gathering of forces, you can stop defending and start participating.
You can just be the interface.
And reality keeps reminding us of this anyway.
How do you mean?
Through loss, through change, through aging. Reality is constantly whispering, you don't own this. The text says, what we call mine was always just passing through.
So the invitation isn't to give away all your possessions, it's just to change the story you tell yourself about them.
Yes. To enjoy the thar without confusing it with your identity. To do the work without confusing the outcome with your worth.
It's moving from the anxiety of the owner to the curiosity of the participant.
Curiosity is the perfect word. An interface is active.
Yeah.
It connects. It's a vital role. It just isn't a lonely fortress.
I love that. So to wrap this up, we started at the word mine, and we've traveled to this idea that the self is an interface, a place where biology, history, and chance intersect.
And that this shift from ownership to participation relieves us of fragile pride and misplaced guilt.
It lets us feel accurate instead of just proud. And it aligns us with how the world actually works.
It lets us play the game of life without being crushed by it.
So here's the thought I want to leave everyone with, and it's a bit of a mind bender. We've talked about how your thoughts and achievements are just visitors passing through the interface of you.
Right.
So take a second right now, look at where you are, and ask yourself, if you aren't generating this experience, what forces are currently intersecting right now to create the person listening to this deep dive?
What history, what biology, what timing is meeting right there in you?
It's a question that might just make the traffic jam a little more interesting. Thanks for deep diving with us. We'll see you next time.
Take care.